Chinese Communist Party is creating a new system of social control that is beyond anything Orwell could have imagined. Now look, in a new communist push, the CCP is rolling out new forms of technology that are going to take surveillance and social control far beyond anything we could have imagined. And while the Orwellian controls are, again, concerning enough, the frontier technologies, even outside of AI, they get even more disturbing when you get to the military and weapons front. Now you might remember the incidents of so-called Havana syndrome. These were weapons that can target people's minds, affect them in ways that make them feel, maybe feel sick, maybe feel like they're going crazy, but they can't find any clear cause of it. These are military tools to make people feel like they're losing their minds. Now, back in 2016, cases started emerging where U.S. government employees, federal agents, and also members of the U.S. military, even their family members, in fact, started reporting strange symptoms of these illnesses. Now, focus shifted to the embassies in Havana, Cuba. And in 2021, federal agencies began suggesting that these attacks may have emerged from directed energy attacks. These are next-generation weapons, right? They're sonic weapons, they're electromagnetic field weapons, and so on. Now, look, these cases were written off by some as a type of moral panic. It's just people's imaginations, right? But as the investigations continued, it became increasingly clear that U.S. adversaries were, in fact, targeting American government employees using next-generation weapons. Now, in March of this year, a 60 Minutes investigation revealed that the attacks appear to be very much real. Now, in light of this, the House Homeland Security Committee held a meeting on so-called Havana syndrome. This was on May 8th, their hearing this year. And claims emerged on this, and they were pretty shocking. Weapon technology in this front, in fact, they're not just limited to sonic weapons. These are things on the spectrum of sound. It turns out these attacks on U.S. government employees also, that they're pretty widespread. This happens commonly, including, in fact, on U.S. soil right in Washington, D.C., the capital of the United States. Witnesses at this hearing, they suggested that Russia was the most likely culprit, although they can't fully pin it on anybody because it's so hard to do so. But they noted the CCP was very likely involved as well. Watch.
We have the specific evidence of Russian operatives being in China at the time when American diplomats suffered incidents. This could not have happened without the knowledge and at least passive cooperation by Chinese intelligence, which means Chinese intelligence would be exposed to the capabilities and possibility of such a weapon, which probably means they have developed their own version or borrowed it from Russia.
Now, the forms and uses of these attacks go beyond just symptoms of illness, as I briefly mentioned. They're targeting members of our military, and these types of attacks are even taking place, again, on U.S. soil. Watch.
There's no entry or exit wound. How they're designed is to make the target feel like they're crazy, like they're imagining things, especially on the low duration, the low intensity, long duration hits.
But you were saying that the targets are most often always either CIA, FBI, intelligence, law enforcement individuals. Is that correct?
No, I said diplomats, intelligence community, and Department of Defense make up the lion's share. You often don't hear about the Department of Defense, despite DoD having 5 or 10 times the number of survivors that Department of State has.
Thank you for that correction, sir. And you guys also said that these attacks are happening right here in this city. Is that correct?
Yes.
Remember, Cold War type weapons often aim for things like plausible deniability. You want to be able to deny it. Invisible wars, attacks that are difficult to pin on any individual nation, larger military operations under Cold War tactics, well, they focus more on the gray zone, things that don't quite cross that line of being direct military action. Or they aim, for example, for next-generation weapons, cyber attacks, biological warfare, maybe even sonic or energy weapons. But back to artificial intelligence. The frontiers of this are also opening up new doors, not just for weapons, but also on the fronts of surveillance and social control. Now, we know about some of the programs here in the United States for next-generation computers, the chips in people's brains that let them control electronic systems. The Chinese Communist Party is actually working on things just like this as well, but they're doing it for other reasons. Back in 2019, a new brain-reading chip was unveiled at China's World Intelligence Congress. They called it the Brain Talker. Now, the Sun reported at the time that in the future, this technology could be used for educational purposes, gaming, or as a medical device for people who struggle to move, such as those with motor or neuron diseases, right? It wasn't long, though, before the CCP was accused of weaponizing this technology. In fact, right along those lines. In 2021, the Biden administration imposed trade restrictions on 30 Chinese entities, and those included allegations that some of them were developing brain control weaponry, the exact phrase they used, actually, and to carry out human rights abuses as well, particularly against ethnic minorities in Xinjiang. That's where the Muslim Uyghurs are. Now, at the same time, the U.S. Treasury Department sanctioned Chinese tech companies for biometric surveillance and tracking of ethnic and religious minorities in China, particularly the predominantly Muslim Uyghur minority in Xinjiang. Briefly, biometrics, that can be your fingerprints, your DNA, your retinas, anything in your body that lets them track you, surveil you, or take records of who you are. Now, interestingly, they unfortunately didn't elaborate further on the so-called brain-controlled weaponry. We were left guessing on what exactly that entailed. But since then, we've watched the Chinese Communist Party doing a whole lot more with technology that sounds a whole lot like that. In 2022, Chinese researchers unveiled a new industrial robot. And what does it do? Well, it could allegedly read the minds of human factory workers with 96% accuracy. Imagine your coworker is a robot and it's reading your thoughts and reporting on you to the boss. And by nature of that too, maybe to the CCP more directly. But even going back to 2019, the Chinese Communist Party was already using similar technologies against school children. And part of this was being done in collaboration, notably with U.S. tech companies.